Princess Elena stood at the window of her private chambers, watching the morning mist roll across the palace gardens. Her fingers trembled as she held the letter that would change everything. For 20 years, she had kept silent about what she knew, but now the truth burned inside her like wildfire. The kingdom of Valdoria had always appeared perfect to the outside world. King Marcus ruled with wisdom, Queen Sophia charmed foreign dignitaries with her grace, and Crown Prince Alexander prepared to take the throne. But Elena knew the polished surface hid cracks that ran deep. She remembered that night 2 decades ago when she had accidentally overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for her ears. Young and curious, she had been exploring the secret passages of the palace when voices drifted through the walls. Queen Sophia's voice, usually so controlled, had been shaking with emotion. "No one can ever know," Sophia had said. "If the truth about Alexander comes out, it will destroy the monarchy." Elena had frozen in the passage, her heart pounding. Through a crack in the wall, she could see Sophia speaking to Lord Pemberton, the royal physician. "The blood tests are conclusive, Your Majesty," Pemberton had replied. "The Crown Prince is not the king's biological son." The revelation had stolen Elena's breath. She had fled the passage, her mind reeling. For years, she had carried this burden alone, watching Alexander grow into a man who believed he was destined to rule by birthright. Now, as Elena stared at the letter in her hands, she knew the time for silence had ended. The letter was from Lord Pemberton himself, written on his deathbed. He had sent copies to several members of the royal family, unable to take the secret to his grave. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, quickly hiding the letter. Crown Prince Alexander entered, his face grave. At 35, he had his mother's dark eyes and refined features. Elena had always wondered who his real father was. "Elena," he said, closing the door behind him, "I need to speak with you urgently." She turned to face him, keeping her expression neutral. "What is it, Alexander?" He pulled out an envelope identical to hers. "Did you receive one too?" Elena's heart sank. She nodded slowly. Alexander's jaw tightened. "Is it true? What Pemberton claims?" For a moment, Elena considered lying. But looking into Alexander's eyes, she saw not the confident crown prince, but a man whose entire world was crumbling. "I've known for 20 years, she whispered. Alexander staggered back as if she had struck him. "You knew? All this time?" "I was young, Alexander. I didn't know what to do, Mother. Queen Sophia begged me never to speak of it." "You're not my real sister," Alexander said, the words hanging heavy between them. "You'll always be my brother," Elena said firmly. "Blood doesn't change that." Alexander laughed bitterly. "Blood changes everything in a monarchy. I'm not the rightful heir." The palace had been in subtle chaos all morning. Servants whispered in corners, and Elena had noticed several emergency meetings being called. The letters had been sent to key palace officials, ensuring the secret could no longer be contained. "What will you do?" Elena asked. "I don't know," Alexander admitted. "Father, the king doesn't know yet. The council is meeting to decide how to tell him." Elena felt sick. King Marcus had always been a proud man, devoted to the ancient bloodline of Valdoria. This revelation would destroy him. "There's more," Alexander said quietly. "Pemberton's letter hints that Mother knows who my biological father is, someone close to the royal family." Elena's mind raced. Who could it be? Which of the nobles who frequented the palace 25 years ago could have captured the queen's heart? A commotion in the courtyard below drew their attention. Guards were surrounding a carriage, and Elena recognized the coat of arms. It belonged to Duke Ferdinand, the king's younger brother. "Uncle Ferdinand?" Alexander said, his voice hollow. He's supposed to be touring the northern provinces. But Elena remembered something else. 25 years ago, Ferdinand had been young and handsome, a war hero who had captured the hearts of many ladies at court. He had also been very close to Queen Sophia before her marriage to the king. "Alexander?" Elena said slowly. "What if—" But Alexander was already moving toward the door. "I need to speak with Mother." Elena followed him through the palace corridors. Courtiers quickly stepped aside, sensing the tension radiating from the crown prince. They found Queen Sophia in her study, and Elena was shocked by her appearance. The usually composed queen looked haggard, her eyes red from crying. "Alexander," Sophia said, rising from her chair. "My dear boy." "Don't," Alexander said sharply. "Just tell me the truth. Is Duke Ferdinand my father?" Sophia's face crumpled. "How did you—" "So it's true," Alexander said, his voice breaking. "My uncle is my father. This is beyond scandal. It's incest in the eyes of the law." "It wasn't like that," Sophia said desperately. "Ferdinand and we loved each other before I was chosen to marry your father. The marriage was arranged for political reasons. I tried to forget Ferdinand, but you couldn't," Elena finished softly. Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "One night we gave in to our feelings. Just once. When I discovered I was pregnant, I knew it had to be Ferdinand's child. The timing, the king and I had not been together in months." "So you lied," Alexander said. "You let father believe I was his son. You let me believe it." "What choice did I have?" Sophia cried. "If the truth came out, it would have meant war. The noble houses would have torn the kingdom apart. I did it to protect Valdoria." "You did it to protect yourself," Alexander shot back. The door burst open, and King Marcus entered, flanked by guards. His face was like stone, but Elena could see the pain in his eyes. "Leave us," he commanded. The guards withdrew, but Elena and Alexander remained. Marcus looked at his wife. Former wife, Elena realized with a shock. "The council has informed me of Pemberton's letters. Is it true?" Sophia lifted her chin, finding some remnant of her royal bearing. "Yes." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were cold. "You have 1 hour to pack your things. You will retire to the convent of Silent Sisters. You will never set foot in this palace again." "Marcus, please." 1 hour, he repeated. He turned to Alexander. "You are no son of mine, but you have been raised as my heir, and you have earned the respect of the people. The council will meet tomorrow to decide the succession." "Father," Alexander began, but Marcus had already left. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena watched as her mother, for Sophia was still her mother, crumbled into her chair. "I've destroyed everything," Sophia whispered. Alexander stood frozen, struggling with emotions Elena could only imagine. Finally, he spoke. "You were trying to protect the kingdom. I understand that. But the lies, Mother, the lies have poisoned everything." "Will you ever forgive me?" Sophia asked. Alexander didn't answer. He simply turned and left, leaving Elena alone with their mother. Over the following days, the palace transformed into a battlefield of politics and ambition. The revelation of Alexander's parentage had created a succession crisis. By law, he could not inherit the throne. The next in line was Princess Catherine, Elena's younger sister, but many nobles argued that Duke Ferdinand's son, illegitimate or not, had a stronger claim than a woman. Elena found herself caught in the middle. Catherine, only 22, was terrified at the prospect of becoming queen. She had always been content to live in Alexander's shadow, pursuing her love of art and music. "I can't do it, Elena," Catherine said, pacing her chambers. "I know nothing about ruling. Alexander has been trained for this his entire life." "The law is clear," Elena reminded her. "Illegitimate children cannot inherit." "But he's not just illegitimate," Catherine argued. "He's the son of the king's brother. Some are saying that gives him a unique position. Elena knew Catherine was right. The palace was divided into factions. Some supported Catherine's lawful claim. Others believed Alexander should remain crown prince despite the circumstances of his birth. A third faction, smaller but vocal, suggested that Duke Ferdinand himself should take the throne. Duke Ferdinand had remained at the palace since his arrival, adding to the tension. Elena had observed him carefully. He was still handsome at 50, with the same dark eyes he had passed to his son. But there was something calculating in his manner that made her uneasy. One evening, Elena encountered Ferdinand in the palace library. He was examining a book of royal genealogies, tracing the bloodlines with his finger. "Princess Elena," he said smoothly. "How fortuitous. I was hoping we could speak privately." Elena remained near the door. "What about, uncle?" Ferdinand smiled at the title. "Am I still your uncle? Or should Alexander call me father now? These family relations have become quite complicated." "What do you want, Ferdinand?" His smile faded. "I want what's best for Valdoria. This succession crisis threatens to tear the kingdom apart. We need a strong leader. Catherine is the lawful heir." "Catherine is a child who would rather paint flowers than rule a kingdom," Ferdinand said dismissively. "Alexander has been groomed for the throne. The people expect him to rule." "The people expect honesty from their rulers," Elena countered, "something that's been in short supply lately." Ferdinand's eyes narrowed. "Careful, princess. You may find that honesty is a luxury few can afford in times like these." Elena felt a chill at the implied threat. She left the library quickly, her mind racing. Ferdinand was plotting something, she was certain. Her suspicions were confirmed the next morning when Alexander sought her out. He looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Ferdinand approached me last night," he said without preamble. "He wants to legitimize me." Elena frowned. "He can't do that. Only the king can legitimize a bastard." "He claims that as my biological father and the king's brother, he has the authority. He's found some obscure law from 3 centuries ago." Alexander ran his hand through his hair. "Several nobles support the idea. They say it would solve the crisis." "And what do you think?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "I've wanted to be king my entire life. It's all I've ever known, but not like this. Not through deception and legal manipulation." Elena felt proud of him. "What will you do?" "I need to speak with Catherine first. This affects her more than anyone." They found Catherine in the palace greenhouse, tending to her roses. She looked up as they approached, paint smudged on her cheek. "Let me guess," she said. "Another faction has formed overnight with a new solution to make everything more complicated?" Alexander smiled sadly. "Something like that." He explained Ferdinand's proposal. Catherine listened quietly, then set down her pruning shears. "Do you want to be king, Alexander?" "I thought I did," he admitted. "But now, I don't know if I can build a reign on a foundation of lies." "Then we have a problem," Catherine said. "Because I don't want to be queen. I never have." Elena looked between her siblings. "There might be another solution." They both turned to her. "Abdication," Elena said simply. "If Catherine takes the throne and immediately abdicates, the crown would pass to the next in line." "That would be you," Alexander pointed out. Elena shook her head. "I would also abdicate. The crown would pass to cousin Margaret. She's been governing the eastern provinces successfully for years. She has the experience and the temperament for ruling." Catherine's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. Margaret would make an excellent queen." But Alexander looked troubled. "Ferdinand won't like that. He's invested too much in this game to walk away empty-handed." Elena had been thinking about that too. "Which is why we need to act quickly, before he can marshal more support." That night, Elena put her plan into motion. She met secretly with key council members, presenting her solution. Many were relieved at the prospect of avoiding a prolonged succession crisis. Margaret was respected, competent, and most importantly, had an unblemished reputation. But Ferdinand was not idle. By morning, rumors swept through the palace that Catherine was too mentally fragile to rule, that Elena was power-hungry, and that only Alexander could save the kingdom from chaos. The king, who had remained secluded since the revelation, finally emerged to address the court. He looked aged, as if years had passed in mere days. "I have failed this kingdom," he began, his voice carrying through the great hall. "I failed to see the deception in my own household. I failed to protect the integrity of the crown. But I will not fail in this final duty." He turned to Alexander. "You are not my son by blood, but you have shown more honor in these dark days than many who share my lineage. However, the law is clear. You cannot inherit." Then to Catherine, "You are my daughter and my lawful heir. But I know your heart, child. You were not meant for a throne." Finally, to Elena, "You have shown wisdom beyond your years. Your solution honors both law and pragmatism. I hereby decree that upon my abdication, which I announce effective immediately, the crown shall pass through the lawful line of succession as you have proposed." The hall erupted in chaos. Ferdinand's face was murderous, but he was trapped. To oppose the king's decree would be treason. In the days that followed, the plan unfolded exactly as Elena had designed. Catherine took the crown for exactly 1 hour before abdicating in Elena's favor. Elena held it for even less time before Margaret arrived from the eastern provinces to claim her unexpected destiny. Alexander, freed from the burden of a false birthright, chose to leave court. "I need to discover who I am without a crown," he told Elena. "Perhaps I'll travel, see the world beyond these palace walls." Ferdinand slunk back to his estates, his ambitions thwarted. Queen Sophia, as decreed, retired to the convent. The king, after his abdication, chose to live quietly in a rural estate, finding peace in his gardens. Elena remained at court as Margaret's chief advisor. The new queen proved to be everything the kingdom needed, steady, just, and untainted by the scandals of the past. 1 year later, on a crisp autumn morning, Elena received a letter from Alexander. He wrote from a distant land where he had found purpose helping to build schools and hospitals. He had also found love with a merchant's daughter who knew nothing of his royal past. "I am finally free," he wrote. "The truth, painful as it was, liberated us all. Thank you, my dear sister, for having the courage I lacked." Elena smiled, folding the letter carefully. Through the window she could see Queen Margaret holding court in the garden, the kingdom flourishing under her rule. The palace that had once harbored so many secrets now stood open to the light. She thought of her mother in her convent, finding redemption in service, of the king in his garden, finally at peace, of Ferdinand, whose ambitions had crumbled to dust, and of Alexander, building a new life, far from the crown that had never truly been his. The truth had indeed sent shockwaves through the palace. But from the rubble of lies and deception, they had built something stronger. A kingdom founded on honesty, where merit mattered more than blood, and where even the most carefully guarded secrets could not destroy those who faced them with courage. Elena picked up her pen to write back to Alexander. She would tell him of the reforms Margaret was implementing, of Catherine's first art exhibition, of the peace that had finally settled over Valdoria. But mostly she would tell him that she was proud of him, not for the prince he had been, but for the man he had chosen to become. The sun climbed higher, casting golden light through the palace windows. It was a new day in Valdoria, and for the first time in 20 years there were no shadows left to hide the truth.